أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Welcome, everyone. Let's take a moment to reflect on something that touches all of our lives, our finances. The Quran invites us to see our economic choices as something much deeper than just transactions. They're actually profound expressions of our inner state. It suggests that behind every act of spending, saving, or earning, we're making a choice between two totally different ways of seeing the world. So let's explore this distinction together.
So on one side, you have what we could call the divine economy. This is an economy that's rooted in tawakkul, in a deep, profound trust in the sustainer of all worlds. It's an economy that embraces vulnerability and fosters this beautiful circulation of blessings. But then, on the other side, you have the ego's economy. And this one, it's built on a foundation of fear, on a desperate need for control, and it almost always leads to extraction, taking more than you give. This right here, this is the core contrast we're going to be looking at.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, let's start with the ideal. The Quran gives us a beautiful model for this economy of trust, and it's all captured in the incredible concept of sadaqah. What's really profound is when you look at the root of the word itself. Sadaqah comes from the root sidq, which means truthfulness or sincerity. So this is not just about giving money, it's an act that confirms our sincerity with God. It's a proof of our faith in His promise of abundance. You could say it's an act of the heart, long before it becomes an act of the hand.
And the Quran doesn't just mention it, it gives us a clear spiritual curriculum for how to practice it. It teaches us to give from the good things we've earned, from what we actually value, not just our leftovers. It asks us to challenge that little inner whisper of Satan that threatens us with poverty if we're generous. It encourages us to give secretly to purify our intention, to let go of our need to control the person we're helping, and to develop the spiritual insight to see the need that's often hidden behind a person's dignity. This is some profound inner training. And what's the result of living this way? Of making giving a continuous state of being, not just a one-off event? The Quran promises a soul that is truly liberated. No fear for them, nor will they grieve. And think about that. That's not just a reward in the next life. That is a description of a heart that has found true peace and security right here in this one. A security that's found in letting go, not in holding on tighter. All right, so now let's flip the coin and look at the absolute opposite of sadaqah. If sincere giving is the medicine, then the Quran identifies a specific sickness of the soul, a spiritual disease that shows up in our finances, and it calls this disease riba. Now, on the surface, riba refers to any kind of exploitative, guaranteed increase on a loan or a transaction. The key feature here is the lack of any shared risk or vulnerability. It's that demand for a guaranteed profit no matter what happens to the other person. But the Quran goes much, much deeper, showing us that this is more than just a financial rule. It's a diagnosis of a spiritual condition. Just listen to the imagery the Quran uses here. It's absolutely startling. It says that those who live by this principle will stand on the day of judgment like someone who's been driven to madness by Satan's touch, stumbling around, completely disoriented. And this isn't just a punishment, it's a description of their inner reality. And this really gets to the core of the problem. The madness is a state of distorted perception. It's when the heart becomes so confused that it literally can't tell the difference between fair trade and unjust extraction. It starts to justify itself, saying, oh, trade is just like riba. It blurs the ethical lines that God has drawn. It's a corruption of our sight before it ever becomes a corruption of our society. So what is that inner voice of riba? Well, it's the ego's desperate demand for absolute security. It's that declaration inside that says, I will grow but without any risk. I will increase my wealth but without any possibility of loss. I will be secure but without depending on anyone, not even God. As the great master Ibn Arabi put it, taking without giving is the first fracture of justice. Riba is the system that's built on that fracture. Because this is such a profound spiritual problem, the Quran raises the stakes in a way that you find almost nowhere else in its pages. It frames our choice in the most severe terms possible. Be warned of war from God and His messenger? That language is just shocking. It's designed to make us stop in our tracks and ask a really critical question.
Of all the things that are prohibited in the faith, why does this one merit a declaration of war? What makes it so fundamentally dangerous to the human soul and to all of society?
Well, the answer seems to be that riba isn't treated as just another sin. It's treated as a competing theology, a whole competing worldview.
It's a worldview that declares my systems, my contracts, my guaranteed returns. These are what I trust to secure my future. And that directly competes with the declaration of faith, of Tawheed, which says Allah, He is the one who sustains all futures. You simply cannot hold both of those beliefs in your heart at the same time.
And so God promises this great reversal of how things appear. Verse 276 tells us that God strips riba of all blessing, and He nurtures sadaqah with growth. So the thing that looks like an increase on the surface is actually being emptied of all its reality, all its barakah. And the thing that looks like a decrease, giving something away, is in reality being nurtured and multiplied by God in ways we can't even begin to calculate.
So the alternative here isn't just to avoid riba. The divine alternative isn't some cold, neutral financial system. It's a system that's supposed to be infused with active mercy. Right after that declaration of war, the Qur'an immediately calls us to compassion. If a debtor is in difficulty, give them more time. And if you forgive the debt entirely as an act of charity, it is better for you if only you knew. Mercy is the real resistance to extraction.
Now, it's really easy to hear all this and to think only of huge, large-scale banking systems. But the Qur'an is always speaking first and foremost to the individual heart. So let's bring this conversation back home into the economy of our own souls. Let's just sit with this question for a moment. Where in my life do I seek gain without vulnerability? In my relationships? In my career? In my spiritual practice? Where am I trying to engineer some kind of guaranteed emotional or material return without being open, without any real risk of loss or disappointment?
And here's a second related question for our hearts. Where in my life do I find myself building these fortresses of certainty and control when what's really being asked of me is to just take a deep breath and offer trust? Trust in the process, trust in another person, and ultimately, trust in God. So how can we start to rewire our hearts for trust? Well, we can try to give in a way that stretches us a little, that feels just slightly uncomfortable. We can consciously choose one relationship in our life and just release the expectation of getting something back. We can practice just sitting with that feeling of fear when it comes up, that fear of loss, instead of immediately rushing to fix it. And we can fill our hearts with the remembrance of God's beautiful names. Ya Razak, O ultimate provider. Ya Qayyum, O self-sustaining sustainer of all. And perhaps we can end our reflection together with this quiet prayer in our hearts. O sustainer beyond all systems, break the illusion of my control. Let me live in your economy of trust, where giving is never a loss. Amen. This reflection has been compiled with deep gratitude by Mir Ali Shah, a fellow seeker sharing these insights through living the wisdom of the Quran. And finally, with humility, we ask God for forgiveness and acceptance for any errors or mispronunciations that may have occurred in the recitation or explanation of this sacred text, particularly through the use of AI in this production. May He accept our sincere efforts. Peace be with you.